Just a quick disclosure to share in conjunction with this podcast. Each of us are speaking to our personal experiences and do not consider ourselves experts and cannot offer medical, therapy, financial, or legal advice. We represent a wide range of experience on the autism spectrum and will always honor each perspective that is brought to our discussions. Our experiences, opinions, and perspectives are all unique and different and will be celebrated. Thank you so much for listening and connecting with us. Thank you. Welcome to Navigating Adult Autism. We are 7 moms with a lot of experience, a lot of perspectives, and a lot of opinions. My name is Mary. I'm here with Heather, Cynthia, Tara, Dawn, Elizabeth, and Kara. And we are discussing the good, the bad, the ugly, what worked, what didn't work, looking back at the public school education, or even private, if some of them went to private, education, IEPs, all of our experiences, what worked and what didn't. And we want our listeners to listen, the younger kids, parents of younger children, so they can be prepared for what we went through, and maybe you'll learn something. Our older listeners, not elderly, but I don't really care what age you are, but listen to maybe mentor adults and what we've gone through and what current parents may be going through at this time in their lives, sitting through IEP meetings, special ed department issues, school issues. This is could be a hot topic, right, Heather? And to all of us, actually, because we've all had good and bad experiences, and it's a lot. IEPs are a lot. So who wants to start? Dawn?
Sure.
I just threw that at her, so.
No, thinking about this.
What did you research about it? What were your thoughts about it?
My thoughts were, looking back on my son, he's now 27. We did change school districts to give another school district an opportunity to educate my child.
Because you weren't happy with the other one? Or not satisfied?
Yeah. We decided, we wanted to buy a bigger house too.
Okay.
We'd paid off the smaller house in Southwest.
And not to interrupt you, but let's talk about that a lot of people do move districts.
I did.
A lot of people are moving districts to
did.
Yeah, we did.
Heather did too.
Yep. We moved to
So how many did? You did too? So 1, 2, 3, 4? Mm-hmm. I didn't.
We moved for that very reason.
Okay.
Because I was done.
Yeah. And we didn't move districts, but we went private for many years too. So I guess that is the same thing.
Yeah, and we went homeschool for a couple of years. So.
Yeah, homeschool. Okay.
So every single one of us. Every single one of us.
I tried to do a hybrid situation where he went to the self-contained autism classroom and we checked him out to do private ABA at a church nearby. So, I wish I would have continued that because it was working. That was first grade. Was that first grade? No, that was kindergarten. And I wish I would have continued it on, but I was running out of steam and wasn't getting much encouragement from the public school for me to continue this. But I think it would have been in JR's best interest. My school experience with JR, you remember Oliver Twist? He's coming with the bowl and he goes, "Thank you very much. Might I have some more?"
Right.
And that's the attitude that I have to have. It's like, I'm thankful that you exist. I'm thankful that you're up to the school district will take this challenge on because it is a challenge. And if it had been 50, 60 years ago, the public schools would have not accepted it. They wouldn't have had to. But now they have to. And they keep telling us, we can't give you the Cadillac version of an education, but, we can try to give you a Ford or, or whatever. And I wish I had been pushier. I didn't realize, because he was my first child, and I have 2, I have a daughter who's 2 years younger. If I had seen her path of development and then JR's, I think I would have noticed the language delay more and been a little bit more adept to recognizing that we had some issues that were coming at us. I mean, I wasn't in La La Land too long, but I was. Missed first steps because of that. So,
but overall, how was your good overall, like as he got older, how was it?
It was okay, but I didn't have in mind his future. It's like we're just wanting to get through school. Well, but if school doesn't do a good enough job to help develop some job skills within him, he's not going to have the employment opportunities if they had done the best job that they possibly can. Now they're busy. I know that. I've been a teacher myself.
For 2 years.
Yeah, 2 years in the public school. I have more years in Christian school. And I got to tell you, my first year of teaching. So I'm in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So I'm a Yankee in the deep South. So that's, an issue. And I'm also, my ethnic background is British. It's very stiff upper lip, fat affect. So it's almost autistic a little bit. Okay. I had his name was Sean. He came in. His mother put him in a private Christian school because she thought he was going to get a better education. So he's in my class. I did a beautiful job of teaching. I did. Mm-hmm. He failed. He deserved to fail. He didn't benefit from my wonderful teaching. Mm-hmm. And I think about that quite often now, having JR. Wisely, the principal told me, you will tutor him. And I did, probably not with the warmest of hearts, but I did tutor him. And I then a special needs parent, and I have a child Sean, he didn't have any behavioral issues. He just had a learning disability.
Right.
And I, as a teacher, was having a real hard time accommodating and meeting his needs.
Right.
So
you're probably young and inexperienced too, just starting out. So you didn't have a lot of experience under your belt. So
yeah,
that matters. But
another thing, and we said this off mic, the IEP, that process of creating the paperwork year after year after year, and you get to the point where it doesn't really matter. Chances are they're not really following it anyway. And you forget it is important. Mm-hmm. First, you're creating a paper trail. So you're documenting from year to year to year what's changing, what's improving. And so you need that paper trail. And you think, well, once I get out of high school, I don't have to do IEP meetings. Wrong. If you have case management, you're going to be developing an individual support plan. So you still have that paperwork. So, it's best just to get with the paperwork, diligently, year after year, document, keep good records. It's going to make a difference. There's times where you feel like it's not.
And for the listeners, an IEP is an individualized education plan that special ed parents have to go through every year. We have to sit through an IEP meeting that can be 1 hour to 3 hours long every year. And then they're tested every 3 years to see their goals and if they've improved. So this is just a normal thing for a special ed student. So that's what we're talking about with IEP meetings, because I don't think a lot of people know what those are.
Tell them what it outlines, like how many minutes of...
Yeah, well, it outlines how many minutes of speech, how many minutes of OT.
It's supposed to be sort of like a contract with the school.
How many minutes they're in the special ed classroom or the resource
room. What the
room.
goals are, present level of functioning, if there was any...
IQ every 3 years.
Evaluation.
It's very detailed.
And the school teachers in the school are supposed to go off of this and
to educate
your child and work on these goals daily.
That's why they call it.
Does it always happen?
Individual.
And you should be able to, in every state, go to your Department of Education website and be able to find a template so that you know what should be in there. Mm-hmm. And I know here they use that template, and so they always look the same and cover everything. But you should be able to find a template for your state.
And I know here in Missouri, there's a group called Impact, and it took me a few years before I actually went to the training. Have you guys,
I
you
did
guys go to
that,
the
yeah.
impact training? It was like a full day. I drove to Kansas City.
First day I met Elizabeth was an impact training.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
They have it. You had to go all the way to
They had
Kansas
it
City.
here.
Okay, I did it all here
Yeah.
in Springfield.
Yeah, I was really needing it. And so that was the next one was in Kansas City. So I drove up there for a full day.
And I had people from Impact join me in IEP meetings
Yes,
too.
they can join you in the meeting.
I don't think they do that anymore.
They do.
They did it when
still?
Zachary was in high school. Yeah.
Yes, because I just referred my mother-in-law. Remember, my nephew has some special needs, and she said it was indispensable. She, the Impact volunteer, went to all of the IEPs and fought Springfield.
You can have anyone come to your IEP meeting, really.
Yeah,
You just
but
have
this
to let
person was intelligent and knew what.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Our impact trainings now, a lot of them are virtual, and we're trying to advertise them in the gossip, the monthly gossip.
Oh, good.
And
Which you can find on our website,
Right.
navigatingadultautism.com,
Impact is
And you go-
MPACT.
Right.
under the
Impact.
blog.
It's a parent training information center. Like by law, every state has to have one. So here in Missouri, it's called Impact.
Yeah, so Missouri Parents Act. So many, many years ago, and I don't know all the details, there was a lawsuit with through special education, and the family, part of the settlement was that every state was supposed to develop this same type of agency. So it's funded by the schools. I don't know if it's funded, by the state, the school system, but it's funded, and but it's more of a third party, so they're not accountable necessarily to the school. They're accountable to the families.
But I think you can still, it's almost run like a nonprofit because you can give to Impact as a, so you can donate to Impact if you.
So Dawn's right. Every state is supposed to have one through the Parents Act.
Yeah, and you can also have your support coordinator come to your IEP meetings too, if you'd like, if you have a support coordinator. We talked about that topic before.
And if you cry a lot, you can have another mom come.
Yeah,
Because
have a mom come.
I went a lot. I went to,
come.
I went to a lot of IEPs.
Yes.
Well, I was going to say for people that haven't participated in this, maybe you're a family member and your kids were taking the IEP meetings and you've never been. The reason, why would you need? It's a great question. Why would you need an advocate with you as a parent in an IEP meeting? And from my perspective, that would be because an IEP, for us, and I know I'm not the only person that felt this way, it's a one-sided conversation. So the school themselves, while we had some lovely individuals in the rooms at times, Zachary had some really great special ed teachers, but there's a conversational wall that goes up because there's this thing called suing people and asking
Due
for
process.
things that cost money. And so what happens is it's almost like what is it when they prep you before you have to go to court? What's that called? Is it not a dissertation, but basically they tell you answer the question and only the question. Do not expand on your answer. If it's a yes answer, you answer yes, right? That's how an IEP was for all 12 years that we had one. So if there was something that maybe could have helped Zachary, let's say an iPad, let's just say that early in the days because schools were not using iPads like they are now. There would not be anyone from the school system that would even recommend that to us or bring that up because while it might help Zachary improve, it
They don't
costs
want to pay for
money. Yeah. So, so it is kind of you against them, even if you have some kumbaya moments during them. That's why it is you're kind of going into battle. And I haven't met any other parents, social media or otherwise, that haven't had this feeling. That's why there's tears and no one looks forward to these meetings because most often they're not fruitful. You have to bring the stuff up and you are not an educator. I did not go to school for special education, right? I mean, I'm a parent, but somehow we have to know all of it to be able to tell them this is what my child needs instead of them being able to be forthcoming and say, I think Zachary would benefit from this piece here or this reading program here, because that would mean somebody would have to buy it. So
I found out after years of going through IEPs and the trauma, PTSD. After years, I learned it was probably in high school that I learned, I was a salesman at the time. And I learned that if you have them come up with it. So ask them a question. What would you do if this happened in one of your classrooms? Then they would turn around and answer. And guess what? Kelsey's doing that too. So then they couldn't turn it down.
That's a great strategy.
So it was making them come up with the resolution, asking them questions. It was a sales tactic that I learned
Good.
That's
to get more services.
That's so funny. That's called motivational interviewing.
Yeah.
That's a clinical practice. You're trying to find their intrinsic movement should change. Their
And there were times that they were like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that. Do you know? Yeah. But then they already said it. It's a done deal. And it was in the document, hey, you know, she's doing this. So why can't we get this service?
Yeah.
It's a game.
Yeah.
It was a game to me towards the end.
I found that, like, you know, if everything was going well, I mean, regarding behavior, like if your child has good behavior and they're not like having any problems in the classroom, it was a much easier IEP than when you go in and they're having behavior problems, because then you feel like it's all your fault. Like they come to you like, oh, well, you know, your child's having behavior problems.
And they'll blame the behavior. Yeah. And that's why he's not reaching those goals, is because he has these behaviors.
Yeah.
So then you come up with a behavior plan. And there's another plan and more goals.
And then, I mean, a lot of times we would have to go to Dr. Grant. And Dr. Grant would say, well, maybe they need this. So we would have to be like Heather and be that outside influence saying, we want an autism person to come in and, you know, and watch him.
Observe him
for like 3 hours or whatever. And of course, he didn't have any behavior during those 3 hours, of course. But yeah, it's like it is, you know. And you know what? Maybe it's just because I go to tears so quickly. But I felt like if there was any type of any problem, that's when you feel like it's your fault that you didn't.
You take it personal. I've told parents in the past. I've gone to a lot of IEPs, and you can't. It's really, really hard not to take it personal when they're talking about your kid, what they can and can't do in those IEPs, and talking badly about your kid. And when you go in, you just, you know, even before you go into IEP, I mean, I get sick. I mean, my stomach would just roll. And, you know, it would take me a week to prepare and do research and try to come up with some goals in advance. And it's very stressful. Because that IEP, if it's not a good one, you know, that's a whole year that she's going to go before the next one.
Too. You have a right to change it or not agree with the goal.
But they don't like that.
Well, no, they don't, but that doesn't
because
matter.
That means more paperwork and more time for them.
But they have to change it. If you don't agree to that goal, they have to change it and come up with another one, though.
And
you
honestly,
can disagree with that.
It was hard for us to even disagree in that regard because we had a kid that was literally nonverbal. So they could lie to my face. I would never know. I mean, all I would know is the end result was Zachary still wasn't doing A, B, or C, but I would not know if they, you know, took all the time and made all the attempts and all that stuff. It's awful.
It is intimidating when you go to those meetings because it's a lot of people. You walk in and there's like 7 people there staring at you and your husband, if you know whoever's there.
If you're lucky, if your husband's there. Yeah. My husband was never with me. No.
So how many?
That's why I cried all the time.
Well, how many of y'all cried at an IEP?
All the time. I did, but I cry over everything.
I'm not sure if I cried in one. Probably a couple of times, but
I only cried a couple times.
Certainly before and after, lots of that.
Yeah.
Once I got used to them at the beginning, it's frustrating. And I think especially since my son's almost 32, they didn't really know what Asperger's syndrome was. The special ed teachers were like, we have no idea what this is. We don't even know. So then I would go to conferences and educate them. And early on, it was easier because he was younger. So there wasn't as many demands put on him. But as time went on, it got easier. One, because I started working for the special ed department in a public school. So I learned a lot that first year. A lot of good too. And valuable
experience.
Because I never went to a public school. I went to Catholic schools, K through 12 or 1 through 12. So it's and my husband went to public schools in St. Louis and loved them and everything. So it was very eye-opening for me. And I actually see both sides. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
There's some crappy special ed teachers out there and there's some wonderful ones. And you're only as good as your leader. But I saw special ed teachers not even be able to work with their students in their classroom because of one student who had a behavior that took up their whole time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, holy good night. Like, wow, this is what goes on in here. Like,
Yeah.
And I felt bad for the teacher, and the teacher felt bad too. But if one child could disrupt 12 kids in there, and the kids are just get busy, do this, do that,
Right.
give them this, and the parents scrambling around, or the parents trying to restrain, and then the teacher's trying to work and calling the principal. Many, many times I saw kids not getting educated in a special ed classroom because they're too busy dealing with one child who was a behavior, and that child could not be placed in a special classroom for behaviors because the paperwork wasn't done. So then that child had to keep coming, and what was the teacher supposed to do? She had no choice. And are they going to hire more people? No, wasn't in the budget. You can't, that just doesn't happen.
That's why I became very active in my kids' school. There's no way I could have worked when I was, after Zion was diagnosed, because I literally was a PTA volunteer almost every day at Ozark South. And with the first two, actually, it's sort of funny because I was looking through Caleb, my youngest son's baby book the other day. I did not remember any of his teachers because I was still volunteering at all of Zion and Hannah's. Zion and Hannah went to every school, and I was volunteering. I just sort of moved up with him. So poor Caleb got the short end of the stick. I don't even remember his teachers, but yeah, we had I can't imagine. I can see definitely both sides of it. Like when I was there and I knew Zion was having a fit, I felt for them because I knew that none of those other kids in that class were getting what they needed too. So I would just go in there or take him away. But we had good teachers. We had some really good principal and stuff that stepped in. But yeah.
And that's the other thing. It's the school, it's the principal too, how that principal leads that particular school.
It absolutely is.
They play a big part in that. And so I was a behavior tech, so I traveled school. So I knew I had to put a different hat on whoever I was dealing with. But for the most part, I actually loved that program and loved that job for a long time. But I really saw another side of it that I didn't expect. And then, you get the new teacher that just graduated and she's in special ed and she's still learning.
Yeah.
And I'm like, do you have the IEPs out? Like, oh, well, they're in my drawer. I haven't even had time to look at them yet. I'm like, okay, because she's supposed to only look at them.
That's not the path to success.
But she's only told to look at them during her planning time. She can't look at them. So then your planning time can also go right out the window if you're
right.
To me, before the year starts, before the school year starts, they should know what's in the IEP. I had a teacher.
They're supposed to. You're right.
She was the one. Let me think. It was middle school. I'm not going to talk about where it was or anything like that. But I guess she was pretty close to retirement. She was new for the special ed, and whatever words we want to use. When Zachary was in school, they said lower functioning classroom. I don't know what they would call them now, but
they change the name all the time.
Yes. Yeah. So it was in that classroom. So obviously that would be a red flag that most of these people need one-on-one support.
Life skills, I think, is what.
And so we came in, I can't remember if it was the first day or whatever. And this, God bless her, she was sitting down having a snack. And I asked where Zachary was. And she said she sent him on out to the bus. She literally let him out of the classroom by himself. And I knew right then she hadn't read his IEP. And that was the only year. Like I really am. I know I'm a little bit feisty, but I am really kind. Okay. Generally.
We know.
But that was the year that I had so many meetings with the principal, and her contract was, she left in the middle of the year. Let's just say that she was about to retire and they had put her in there. And so that was a bad choice on their part. Yes. And then we had to get a teacher in the middle of the year. And I say this with love. I have so many educators in my family, but you don't probably get the top pick of teachers in the middle of the year because most of them already have contracts and they're working and doing great things. And so the rest of the year I had to mess with that. And that was those IEP meetings were awful. And they wanted to change like his I remember they wanted to change a goal to him learning how to moisten envelopes. That was the big goal that she wanted to put on his IEP. And
she wanted that as a goal. on the IEP?
Yeah.
Oh,
he was in 5th grade.
It's measurable.
And about the most
it is
stupid
measurable,
thing
you're
I've
right.
ever heard. Yeah. I mean, don't tell me you're going to teach. I can teach my kid how to lick an envelope. That is not what he's in school for. I don't care if he can't talk or not. We're going to do what we need to do. And
right.
we're going to do some academics. Thank you very much. She was let go. I had lots of meetings that year. That was a fairly horrible year.
It seems a little specific too. I mean,
Well, she was thinking she had like those, she had like workshop, right? That's exactly, there was no, she wasn't seeing anything on the horizon, right, for Zachary. It's too hard to engage. You know, these kids are not easy to engage all the time. I totally get that. But she'd given up before she even started. So that wasn't going to work. And I did a couple times have, in that particular situation, a pair that did help, but it was in secret, letting me know that things were not quite the way they might have written it in my communication book, which they very rarely wrote in. So sometimes you do have to get tips, especially when it is nonverbal again.
We had a couple of those, the people that would give you tips.
And I think that maybe some parents that are listening that have really little ones that haven't started school, you may come in with a great, like, this is going to be great. I'm going to get to connect and partner with the school. And I hope that is the way it is. But I will say, I think it depends solely on the group of people that you are working with. And also just like the guidance and, like Mary said, the professionalism of the principal as well, because he's guiding those teachers on how involved and passionate they should be. But I do think that special ed teachers need to have passion. If they've lost that passion because it is a difficult job day to day, they need to teach somewhere else in another classroom.
Well, I also think that having support staff in there saves the passion a little bit.
Yes, have plenty
because
of
seriously, every one of these kids, we say that all the time. You know one child with autism, you know one child with autism.
Right.
Every single kid on the autism spectrum is different.
Absolutely.
I mean, how you see these goals that they're supposed to meet and these out minutes that they're supposed to get. But if you cannot get them to even sit down at a table,
right,
it's totally different. You know, they need to fund some support staff in there.
And then you may have 8 other students in the classroom that they're also trying to work on those goals and their daily goals.
Yeah. They may know all the goals. They may know the IEP back and forth.
Time.
But how are you going to do it if you don't have time?
And that goes to the broken system that is the educational system, because they are paid. They're paid for special ed students. And to say that money goes back to that pot, no way. There is no way that the money they get paid goes directly back to those students. They could tell me all day long, but I don't think that's the case.
They should definitely have a lot more support staff because paras are invaluable. And I think someone mentioned on the last one of our podcasts that paras usually knew what was going on, which is really true. They
super
all
hard
talk.
to get those paras in there.
Yes.
You have to fight for
and
them.
experience too.
I have to say, that was something we looked at. Like we had a para, he was he is a retired superintendent. And he became a para in retirement and was with Zachary in junior high.
Oh,
and
I hear that a lot.
Was wonderful. And he loved those 5 boys that Zachary was in school with, that he moved to the high school so he could still continue to be their para. And trying not to cry, he walked Zachary down the aisle at graduation on Mother's Day. So we have
Mother's Day.
Yeah, it was on Mother's Day.
Oh, I love that.
That's when graduation was. But I mean, the negativity that may seem to be what I'm talking about doesn't mean that all of our experiences with school, we have met and will always be connected with several lovely people that we were in contact with Zachary, and also moved to this particular school system for one individual teacher that we'd heard such great things about. And we're able to have her for 5 years, which was wonderful.
Oh, that's good.
So, but the system, I'm more talking about the system than there's an occasional bad teacher that, needs some help, or maybe they need to be in another area. But the system is what makes people cry usually.
Right.
I think the system needs to be more open to us as parents, whether it's as Tara did, volunteering with PTA.
Well, Dawn, to toot your horn, aren't you one of them that started special education PTA in the Springfield Public Schools before you moved to Willard? I'm just saying.
I was.
And you were involved.
Okay. And I reposted.
Toot your own horn, Don.
Well,
Toot it.
I reposted Autism Gotham from 15 years ago because it just came up as, and I was looking at the resource fair and the breakout sessions, and it was like, oh my word, we still need these topics discussed.
Oh, yeah. That would be interesting to see.
Okay, I want to say a word about SEPTA, and I want to specifically
What
challenge.
does that stand for?
Yeah.
It's a special education PTA.
That you started here in Springfield.
I started.
Is it still
well,
going?
No.
Okay.
I had help. I mean, it
tried.
wasn't me. Mary, yes. So there was a group. Springfield's a PTA town. Just about every elementary building has a PTA. Okay. So we knew that SEPTA existed, and we decided to create one. It didn't survive. There were some missteps. We can talk about that. But a quote that was coming to mind in preparation was, if everyone is rowing the boat, there's less opportunity to rock the boat. So I would go into an IEP meeting and I would tell them, if you're first shift, I'm second shift. And if the two shifts aren't working, if they're not communicating together, you're not working to reach the goal. You've got to show some respect to me as the second shift. Mm-hmm. And I didn't sit on my hands. I didn't do as much as I should have, with him at home. And I think I would encourage, even though we weren't doing academic things, but get your kid out in public, go to Walmart with your kid, push them, challenge them, and let the school know that you're doing this. Yeah. I remember one IEP meeting, we went to unnamed church number 2. And so he's in church. And we're sharing this at the IEP meeting, and they're just commending us. That's wonderful that you're taking your child out in public. I don't know if they were talking disparagingly about the other kids. I'm not sure other parents are taking, you know what? There was 2 of his classmates that were also at unnamed church number 2. I didn't know that because I didn't know who his classmates were. JR's not going to tell me because even though he's verbal, he's not forthcoming with any type of useful information.
Yes.
And so get your kid out in public. On that journal that you're sending back and forth,
Yes.
you tell them, last night, Zachary and I went to Walmart and he did this and that, and I was very pleased with how he behaved. What's he doing when he's with you on first shift?
I know, because they would always just say, had a good day. Like, I don't know what that means or if it's true, because you didn't give me any details.
Force them to rise to your level of involvement.
Yeah.
And
But you can't. If they won't, they just won't. So then your hands are tied.
It's usually, usually it was a lack of time on their part. I'm sure that's what they would say. But
I've heard that whole journal thing with parents.
Yes.
Like I've been in classrooms where, and the parent
you
has
don't
a
have
journal.
time
You
for
want to write.
journal.
Oh God. I mean, I've heard that a lot.
I know oh God, but
No, and I'm not saying I agree with it.
Like if I could,
But they don't have time. Like they're thinking, when can I do this? When can I write in a journal?
Right.
I think now it's easier with computers because now they can just email.
they can type
faster.
something, or they could make up a sheet. Like I've seen online now where some kids are getting like a report sheet where it's just easily like they did this and this, and then kind of fill in the blanks.
But
that
a good
would
teacher
be better.
would fill it out. I mean, an organized teacher, I should say, because a lot of good teachers are not that
Was
organized.
it in his IEP that they had to fill it
You
out?
might want to put in the IEP.
It was.
I don't
in our
remember
IEP.
Exactly.
But I mean, I'm
There's just
sorry.
too much
I'm
to
sorry.
say.
I'm not very
go for
positive,
it.
but just because it's in the IEP doesn't mean they're doing it. I mean, oh my God.
Well, that's true.
Like, God bless America. Some of it probably, but not all of it.
Yeah.
There's not in our case. And like I said, Zachary couldn't come home and tell me what he did or how many minutes he was in.
That's the
whatever.
sad and hard part.
Yeah, there were times that I'd ask Kelsey, on therapy. I mean, she hadn't gone to therapy. It was like for 3 weeks in a row. And I'm like, so are they going to make this up?
Oh, that used to drive me nuts.
And you didn't know about it until your kid told
Yeah,
you.
the
And
OT
if your
wouldn't
kid
show
isn't
up.
talking, I mean, he could go.
Who knows
Yeah,
if he
I
had
mean,
future
however
OT? I mean,
What I have learned, sad to say, because I was a naive, like I said, a naive, gentle, quiet person. And then I got married, and then I had a kid, and I didn't talk about stuff. And then very quickly, I learned that if I don't speak up, no one gives two craps about what is going on here.
Right.
right.
Only me. I'm the only one that cares. And I drug Michael to every IEP meeting. Not that he said anything too much, but he definitely was at least present, and that was, I think, helpful.
Well, and it helped you whenever you got home that you guys could discuss it. You had
he could
somebody
know.
to talk about.
Yes.
My husband went too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
sure.
Roger went too. He didn't.
I wasn't going to deal with that by myself.
There was
Sometimes
one
I
time he
did. Sometimes I
didn't.
did,
Yeah,
but most of the time my husband was
Sometimes
there.
Jason went, but usually he was traveling. But
There was one time Roger didn't, and it was due to I had gotten one of the persons at school had given me a hint that they were going to try to take Kelsey's IEP completely away from her. And that year she had fallen like 4 or 5 times to get nursing attention, Band-Aids, and one time biting a hole completely through her tongue.
Oh my.
So again, this was before she had her autism diagnosed. This is with her CP. And I told Roger at that time, I told him, I was like, okay, you can't go. And I'm going to bring a tape recorder, and I'm going to use the excuse I'm bringing the tape recorder in so that my husband will be able to listen, when he comes back into town. And so, and I knew that, of course, that wasn't the truth. And so we went in with a friend of mine, and we dropped down the tape recorder, and guess what they did? They just all took off, running off. The IEP meeting started late to go find their tape recorder.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a battle.
Yeah,
You're going into battle.
Yeah.
But that's the only time he didn't go. I made him
Was the
stay
time.
home.
Yeah.
And then that right there went on for the whole year of, we almost went due process, but that went on we ended up hiring an advocate to come in out of Columbia. She was a mom. And she came in, we hired her to come in to several meetings. We had 4 or 5 meetings. The meetings grew to over 25 people, lasting 3 to 4 hours long, the IEPs, going over test results. Ben Franklin, the assistant director of special ed, I think he was the assistant director when he was coming into our IEP. Once we brought in the advocate and paying her to come in, because again, I didn't know a whole lot. I hadn't been to the impact meeting, and I learned a lot through this process. Once we hired her, he started coming to all the IEP meetings, and come to find out they hated each other. They would sit in this IEP meeting and just bicker back and
hated each
forth.
other?
Ben Franklin and my advocate that we hired.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, because she had been to other IEP meetings.
Oh, with him.
With him.
Present.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
I do know the more serious parents get, the more people they invite.
Right.
So,
No, that's
because they are ready. I mean, they are ready there's lawsuits constantly.
Yeah.
There's lawsuits at school, an ungodly amount of lawsuits. And most of them are unjustified. Some of them want, that's a whole other story. Some of them just want a 504 because they want their child to have more time on a test so they'll score higher, and they don't even have a diagnosis.
well, this time they
there's
wanted
a
to
lot
take
of-
Kelsey's IEP completely away and
Yeah,
not even
that
give her
was-
one. And that was not going to happen. She was not maneuvering through the school
because you had
system
to prove
safely.
that she needed it.
Yeah. And I even had the nurses' notes. Teachers, you kind of find out who you could trust and who you couldn't. Some teachers would say, I think Kelsey needs that IEP.
Right.
And then you get in this IEP meeting, they don't say a word. They don't even stand up. That happened to us many times. And how this ended up, to not make a long, this any longer, but we ended up at the end of the year, Ben Franklin ended up calling me and said, I'd like to meet with you. It was the day after school, the end of the school year. He goes, can you meet me here in the classroom at Horseman School in Springfield? And I was like, sure. And I was like, my husband's going to come too. He goes, that's fine. So it was Ben Franklin, my husband, and I, and Kelsey's school teacher. She was in regular ed. And we sat at the little kids' table with little chairs, and he looks at me and he goes, so what do you want? This is after several meetings. I said, it's not what Kelsey wants, it's what Kelsey needs. And I want her to have PT because she's not maneuvering through the school system. According to her test results and the evaluations that we've had, it shows that she's behind. She needs this. And he goes, okay, all right. He said, I'll let you know in 2 weeks. You'll get a letter from me. Now, was that legal? That wasn't an IEP meeting, right? It wasn't an IEP meeting. Was it legal?
Sure.
I mean, it was Ben Franklin, Roger, and I, and the school teacher. All the other people in the IEP team were not there. So he goes, I'll let you know in 2 weeks.
It wasn't an IEP meeting? No.
It wasn't considered an IEP meeting. It was just a meeting.
Yeah. Unless it was called an IEP meeting, then everyone should have been. So it was just a meeting.
We weren't notified. There was no paperwork. So anyway, we met with him. He said, I'll let you know in 2 weeks. Then I got a letter in 2 weeks stating he was going to give Kelsey the PT and OT and continue the IEP.
Good.
Well, after that whole year of all of these IEP meetings, the additional evaluations, the arguments, the crying, we went through the summertime and school was getting ready to start again. And I'm like, Roger, I don't know if I can stomach pulling up to the school. You know, we had this dilemma, this fight with them the previous year, and it took so much out of us. And money, because we had to pay for somebody. Yes, we won. Yes, she got her IEP, but this is second grade. We have how many more years of this? What if every year they decide that they want to take her IEP away? Can I do this every year? So at that point, we're like, well, let's sell. Let's go. We heard Nix is good. We heard Ozark's good. We heard Willard's good. I had gone to school at Willard. And so, and it was where my dad lived. It was out in the Willard area. And we're like, let's start looking. And we did. And we put our house up on the market. We sold the house. We actually moved in with my dad until we got our house built because we ended up deciding to build. And now going into the Willard School District with this big old stack of papers from all these evaluations and all these meetings we had, we walk in and I'm like, okay, here we go. And we walk in and he said, well, this IEP looks great. He went on, he goes, look at all these evaluations. This is the special ed director. What was his name? He went to Fairgrove. He was at Willard and then went to Fairgrove after that.
Give me a second.
But anyway, we sat there. The IEP meeting maybe lasted 30 minutes. And at the end of the IEP, he said, is there anything else that you think that Kelsey needs? I started crying. I had never, out of
how I felt.
those years, I had never been asked that question. Is there anything that you think Kelsey needs ever? And he kind of looked at me and I told him that I've never been asked that question. He goes, well, I'm asking that. Is there anything that you think she needs? And I go,
That's good.
I'll let you know, but right now, no. But thank you so much. And I said, thank you so much for making this so easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I sort of felt like that. That was my whole Zion's whole career experience until some big behavior came up. But yeah, that's really sad. I never felt like my crying was not because they weren't giving me the things that he needed. My crying was because I felt like, his behavior was, I don't know. It just felt like it was like, okay, he's having behavior at school. I felt bad about it. What could I do more? But I think just making my face known all the time at the school. I mean, every teacher knew who I was. And I had a kid that went there before Zion. So they all knew me from that. And First Steps prepared them. I mean, let's talk about First Steps. That was amazing. And he went to the director of special ed in Ozark, suggested he go to kindergarten the summer before to prepare him to get ready for the school. So he went into summer school before he went into kindergarten. And we just had a great experience. So it's really sad that I maybe it's because we all have different, our kids have all different needs and different supports. And maybe the ones that they can provide, or maybe I don't know. I just never had a problem. And most of it was, I think it has a lot to do with the school districts. Can almost guarantee it was our principal, because there was a year, and I'm not going to say who she is, but the year that Mr. Knight left was when things went downhill. And not that I needed more IEP stuff, but that's when Zion's behavior went downhill. So I don't know.
As Kara was listing off the districts that seem to do a good job, there are smaller school districts surrounding Springfield, which is Missouri's largest school district. And you would think it should be the other way around, because Springfield being the largest, it should have the most money. It definitely has. And we probably should do some investigation on that, if property values in Springfield City are not equal to the surrounding areas. But it did seem like the smaller school districts had more flexibility than Springfield did.
Is it because they have less special ed students? But it's still, it kind of comes down to the funding.
We were outside of Springfield.
It's property taxes.
Yes.
We were outside of Springfield, and we didn't get any in a smaller district, and he didn't get. It was hard to get anything because there was no tax base, there was no industry there, and I didn't. When I walked in to even talk about an IEP, I knew nothing about an IEP, and I just walked in, and we had a diagnosis of autism and epilepsy, and I was just told, well, your son should get an IEP. You just go in and ask for an IEP meeting. So that's what I did, but I didn't know anything. And then they started doing the evaluation. So we probably didn't get the evaluations back till after probably February. And then I was also told you need to go out and get more evaluations done on him because you need to have more proof of what's going on. So I went to
So they told you need to go outside
no,
their school
they
district.
didn't. Other people did, which I didn't understand at the time, that the school doesn't have to accept those evaluations because one came from Columbia and then one came from KU Med. So
they're going to want an educational diagnosis anyways.
So I was kind of fighting an uphill battle basically the whole time I was there. And I was the mother that was there every day. I did copying for the teachers. I had to drag Eric into school physically every day from kindergarten through 5th grade. And sometimes the teachers had to rip his hands out of my hair because he would rather he had no behaviorals at school. He'd rather be sunk into the floor than be seen because it was just a miserable place. And the first place you had to go when you got to school was in the big gym. And the gym was loud and stinky and everything was... And he couldn't hardly handle that room. But see, I didn't even know what was going on with Eric. This was all new to me. So I was thinking, why can't you handle that? And then I realized it's just overload for him. So our best friends in our school district were the school nurses and the secretary. We didn't have as close bond to the teachers. And
so when did you decide to homeschool him?
Well, when he was in 6th grade, he was sitting in class, and he wrote on a piece of paper, I'd rather die and be with the Lord than be in this building. And then he crumbled it up and threw it in the trash can. And so then after he left the room, then they pulled it out of the trash to read it. Then they called me to the school and says, we wanted to show this to you when, this is going on. I said, we've been dealing with this for a long time, and I've been talking to you guys for a long time about this, but nobody's listening. Yeah. So I just literally went down to his classroom and I pulled him out of class, and he didn't know it. My husband didn't know it. Nobody knew it. I said, we're going to go and clean out your locker today, right now. And we're going to take you home, and we're going to try to homeschool for a while. And I referred to it as unschooling because we had to fly by the seat of our pants, and we had to hire someone for math and science. And that's when I immersed him into volunteerism. Because he could volunteer at the Wonders of Wildlife, and he could volunteer at the Republican headquarters at that time because he liked one candidate because she had a Down syndrome child.
I hadn't heard that.
Yeah. So anyway, and he actually got to meet her when she came to Springfield, so that was even better.
Oh.
So anyway.
When did he go back? Did he go back to public school at one point?
He went back in 9th grade.
So you homeschooled him for
7th and 8th.
7th and 8th grade?
6th, 7th, and 8th.
Okay.
How did he do when he went back?
He did okay. In fact,
didn't he ask to go back?
He asked. He said he was ready to go back. He thought he was ready to go back. Because really, what we immersed him into, and plus he was in counseling. I mean, he counseled his whole life, so he had all this support building him up. The school had done nothing for him, and it was just. He said, it was just hard. But there wasn't money in that district, and I know it has changed. It's gotten better. But it didn't get better.
So when he went back, he did get an IEP.
Kind of, yeah. You went with me once too. Like he needed pragmatic. I didn't know what I was even talking about. Like he needed help in pragmatic language, and he needed a sensory diet. And that's when they said in a meeting one time, one of the ladies said, well, that's something you get from home. That's food.
Oh, Lord.
Well, yeah. So it was just kind of, anyway, so that was our
Those
trip.
are those PTs and OTs not wanting to do anything.
Yeah. So anyway.
Oh, Lord.
But
Sorry.
then
But he did graduate.
He got sensory diet. I can't get over that.
Yeah.
Then he went to OTC, and it did take him a long time, but we had Jeff Jones, and he really walked him through it. And so it helped him. It took a long time to get his 2-year degree, but he got it.
And what is he doing
for
now
Eric.
for
Well,
employment?
now he is
Yeah, right.
Full circle is what I was going to say.
he's a
Good point,
para, and he's loving it.
At Willard School District.
He is.
Isn't that nice though that he had like some rough experiences in the beginning and now he's back? And
I know.
I bet we'd love to have Eric as our kid's para now if we were back in school.
for sure.
So
It's amazing because Zion he would rather not ever be around children ever again because of his experiences. But
I remember in kindergarten, Miss JR was coming home and talking about Mr. Bryan. So you pull out the IEP. Who's Mr. Bryan? And so finally, I'm in the building. JR's talking about Mr. Bryan. Oh, he's the paraprofessional. So I found out like multiple years later, he had a traumatic brain injury, and Springfield Public Schools had hired him as a para. And I mean, and he was the person that JR was talking about, probably because he was the one who spent the most time with JR. I don't, you know.
That's good, though.
That was good.
actually, Zachary has a picture of him and Dr. Kret is his name because I'm going to say it. At Nixa, go Dr. Kret. He has a picture of him and Dr. Kret framed, and he looks at it every day. While he's pacing back and forth in the living room.
you know those people that have made such a difference in our children's lives. Our kids, like Tammy Osteen, like his floor time therapist. Zion still remembers her. Went to kindergarten with him, and Ryan Knight, the principal at Ozark South. That was, I mean, poor Ryan Knight was. I mean, has made such a difference in our lives because there was times when Zion was like, they would have to clear the entire class because he was throwing stuff or he was, doing something, throwing pencils so they'd just clear the whole class. And Ryan Knight would come and get him and I would be called and I would go into Mr. Knight's office and he's literally under the desk with Zion talking to him under the desk. There's 3 male figures at that school, Mr. Christie, Mr. Spoon, and Ryan Knight. And those 3 male teachers are the ones that were a huge benefit because Zion only responded to, when he would have a meltdown, he'd only respond to males. And one of him he kicked right in the privates once.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah.
All the memories.
Yeah, all the memories. But you know what? I didn't get sued. But I mean, it was just so kind. Another teacher is the one who told me that Zion had done that. I didn't even hear about it from him because they were just so kind. I had a lot of support. It makes me sad that you guys didn't. There were times, I mean, we did have to, and then at middle school he never had one meltdown at school. And then in junior high is when it started again. But, so something in middle school was going really good. But what I was going to say is, I don't know, I can't remember what it was. But yeah, the support that we had, those individuals, I mean, I was so thankful for them.
Yeah.
So
my son still remembers his speech path. And sadly, she is deceased. She had melanoma.
Oh.
Yeah, and died when he was in middle school. Still talks about her to this day. And even has some really weird, like he'll say, I don't know, I dreamt about Miss Palmer. She was talking to me during the night, Mom. And I'm like, oh. Like I'm thinking, Miss Palmer appeared in Conrad. But he remembers those good teachers that were out there. And there's a lot of good ones. And I remember when I worked for the district, I would always, as a parent, I felt, when I was in the good special ed classrooms, I would always thank the teacher. Like, you are such a good teacher. You do such a good job. I always the positive reinforcement back to the teachers that
Yeah.
that matter, because we can't forget about the regular ed teachers that have special ed students in their classroom. I walked in one morning, and I was going to say her name, but she still works for the district. I don't know what she does, but one of the best teachers ever. And I walked in and said, "Good morning," because I was assigned to a student that was disruptive in that classroom, and he was going through testing. And she just turned at me and she had tears coming down her face. And she's like, "I can't do it. I can't. What are we going to do?" Because my class is suffering. Like, she felt for all her, and she was embarrassed if parents came in for the typical kids, because she didn't want to be successful doing her job. You know, I said, "You're doing great." Like, she really was doing great. And the student wasn't even that disruptive, but just shout out to the regular ed teachers that, you know, and if you're a really good reg ed teacher, sometimes you get a lot of the behavior kids thrown on you because you're so good.
Right.
And then that's not fair. So when I left, they were divvying them up because you pretty much knew who needed help or was a tougher student. So I don't know. I just always remember her, and another good teacher I had at Horace Mann. Shout out Mrs. Williams. She had a sister that had a disability. So her heart was just full, and she's still there, and she's still wonderful. So there's a lot of good teachers, but I had an OT that really didn't do his job very well. I must say, very discouraged about him. He didn't, the sensory diet.
Oh, wow.
Or just worked on handwriting, or didn't show up, missed the whole week. I'm like, do they make up? They never make them up. They never, that's a little irritating. But overall, I had a pretty good experience.
Yeah.
I mean, we've talked about the base program. That was great. My son still remembers Trish Grassa, who also recently passed, and Anissa Beaker, and Mrs. Montgomery, Mrs. Evans. And, you know, there's a lot of good experiences. But having worked there, just a lot of crap that goes on there, you know, that can be helped and then can't be helped.
I think there's a distinction for us too, is that we've had lots of really wonderful like we moved to Nixa.
But you filed a complaint.
Well, that was in a previous school system.
Yes, previous school
system. We lived in a town. I'm not going to say what it was. We lived in a town when Zachary was about ready to start. Well, he was ready to go ahead and start the school process, going out of First Steps. And the problem was just the lack of flexibility. If you had autism at that point, and then you did this, and this.
Right.
And part of it was repeating kindergarten twice at that point, and then they had some other plans, but it wasn't individualized. You know, we honestly, we've struggled. And even after we moved to Nixa. So we filed a state complaint with that school system. And then nobody has the time or money to go much past that, because your kid's about to start school and you've got to make choices. So we went ahead and moved to Nixa, because we had heard Nixa and Willard and all those places had.
I remember when Nixa was the place to live, like, for education. Yeah, I remember that.
I think it
still is. Isn't it number one in the state?
It's a pretty awesome school system.
I'm almost positive it just got rated number one in the state.
Yeah. So we moved there, and so we didn't. First of all, we were, my goodness, young, and we didn't have money for a lawyer to sue a school system. I mean, how many people, if they actually had the, you know.
Well, what attorney is going to take it? Trying to find one that specializes in special ed.
And, you know, it'll take so long. They'll be in high school by the time anything happens with it. I mean.
Okay, it's let me change that. It is best school in the Springfield metro area.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we loved Nixa, and we graduated. Zachary graduated from there. But I think the distinction here is not necessarily the school even. It's about the system of special ed and how it's funded and how they use the money. And like, it's just, that part is icky. All of it's icky. And so, did we have some wonderful special ed teachers? Absolutely. The one we moved there for, and we're still connected with those people. So they do make a huge difference in the paras, but you were fighting a system that was too big to win anything with. I mean, that's any type of governmental structure that you're trying to work within is not going to be probably a positive experience. Yeah. And I think ultimately in the rough stage that we had in 5th and 6th grade, it was just because expectations the students, and that like every year there was not really a classroom, a special ed classroom set up for Zachary and the other 4 boys that were, I would say, at a familiar level with each other. And they called them low functioning. So that's the word they used. So there was not a low functioning classroom set up. So every time we moved from elementary to middle school, or middle school to junior high, or junior high to high school, they had to make one.
And as they should.
And they did, yes, and they did. But it always felt like, it actually was. We were like the front of the train here. Like no one had been before us necessarily.
Yeah.
And so that's what made it feel like they need this and they need that and they need this and they need that. Like, we're coming, you prepare for us because we're going to be here and we'd love to learn a little something. And so, anyway, but yeah, I don't want, like I said, I come from a teacher family, like lots of teachers. And so I certainly honor them and know that's difficult. The system and the IEP structure and the, never doing anything kid forward school system wise because they might have to pay $5 for it. Or you know what? Tell me what would work for Zachary and I will pay for it. I mean, I don't care. I did buy iPads and send them to Nixa at that point in elementary school because they did not have them. And I didn't have 10 years for them to wait to do it. So we just bought it ourselves. Like, just the resources, like, could we just talk about them openly and know, like, what would help my kid? I'll be glad to, not that every family can, but I'm just saying.
Jason and I offered to pay for autism training for Ozark schools.
Yeah.
They figured out the money on their own, though, once I showed them.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
I was just going to ask you that. Okay.
We never paid for it. They found the funding. And they sent two people up to St. Louis or Kansas City. I can't remember.
Well, and I know that when I worked at Rivendell, we had a lot of small outlying schools, special ed, that weren't equipped to handle students, especially nonverbal, and they would pay for
the school district would pay for them to go to Rivendell. The school district would pay,
and I remember when I worked for the other school district, I asked that question, and they said, "We have everything we need to take care of them.
Yeah, no,
we don't need to send them because our district has everything we need to educate that child."
We were in too big of a district. We would have went to Rivendell. That's what it was, right? Back in the day. We certainly would have. We could not pay out of pocket for that.
I know.
So, but we knew we were in too big of a school system for that to happen. I think there's less bureaucracy sometimes in the smaller groups, and they can actually say out loud where their gaps are.
Right. Because they had maybe a few special ed students. So they're like, "Oh, we're not equipped to handle. We'll pay for Rivendell." They paid it. So I know that happened a lot, but the bigger districts didn't.
We didn't. We did have 7th and 8th grade. We paid for Infinity Academy,
which used to be Rivendell, and then turned into Infinity.
No,
totally different.
Okay.
Yeah, Infinity was owned by Brenda Bradshaw, and then it was 15 students maybe, and it was really good for Zion. And then he went back in 10th grade to Ozark High School because he asked to do that, but because he had been out of the school more than 3 years, he didn't have an IEP when he first started again. So they had to retest him, and he didn't get all of the services he needed right away, but really because he had already been in Ozark schools and they knew us, they sort of started those services without an IEP. So, yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, but also, let me tell you, it lasted for just a short amount of time, and then he went on homebound. He was on 2 spurts of homebound because he couldn't handle school.
Right. Yeah. Elizabeth, do you have anything to add? Kind of quiet over there.
No. There's just so much, and I've had various experiences, and I just
Negative and positive.
We had really good. That junior high, middle school, those were our not so great years, but we've had some really. Jean Lawson, she won awards for being, teacher of the year. And when we had some really incredible high school teachers, middle school was a little hard. When Chase went to high school, shout out to Angie Grovins. First day, she called me and said, "What's going on here?" And at that point, she had discovered that another special education student had been bullying Chase, and that had gone on for 3 years. So we had the behavior plans, we had the throwing the computers, and going back to the school at one point, the middle school, even the library said, "Hey, is that bullying thing, how's that going?" And I was like, even the librarian knew, and we had no idea.
Right.
We were working on his behavior.
Right.
And that was recognized immediately by another set of eyes.
Right.
And I'm sure the eyes were there because we did have comments later, but somebody actually acted on that. So, I mean, we've had some amazing things happen, but
so all this sounded familiar to you when we were discussing.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I just really, encourage families to just have that communication. Don't be afraid to stand up.
Right.
So just maybe to close, one experience we had was in middle school, and my son Nathan, it was his teacher, was just laughing hysterically about how he had to put tennis balls on all the chairs because Nathan would tap the chairs and do stuff like that. And I asked him to stop. I said, "This is not funny." I said, "You're very inappropriate for laughing about this." I said, "Because it's funny. I think it's funny now, but he'll still be doing this when he's 45,
right.
50, if we're not working on actually helping support him." And I excused myself. I said, "When I come back, I want you to be more serious. This is my son's life." And I left and was unhappy in the hall, came back, and my father was there with me because I did have somebody there. And the tone changed. So,
did you step out to get your own sanity back, or were you?
I didn't want to cry.
You didn't want to cry, and you're proving to them, get it together before I. Okay.
Yeah, and I was mad.
Yeah. Okay.
They would have been angry tears, not sad tears.
Right.
I was mad, and I don't usually get mad.
Right.
But I just couldn't believe how funny he thought that was.
Who said it?
His teacher.
Oh, his teacher. Okay,
Yeah.
I thought you said somebody else.
Yeah,
Okay.
no. And so, and it's just, I don't know.
There's certain things that just really aren't funny.
Yeah.
People think are funny and they're not.
Yeah, but I think I cried more on those good things when they made certain accomplishments.
Yes, me
I
too.
would get teary. So, and that was one thing I always struggled with. And I think I've said it before, is they tell you don't cry.
Yeah.
But
it comes out, doesn't it?
There's no way I could not cry.
right. I mean,
yeah.
it's emotion. It's emotion, and you are passionate. And, I want to cry to celebrate, and I want to cry when it's sad, but it's okay. It should not take away from my perspective or who I am, and that I am this person's best advocate and most passionate about them and their education. So, we've had most of it were good, but we went almost through due process. So all these things, sounded really familiar. I think one thing though I didn't hear, we had my youngest, when he went for his first evals, they were all sitting in this little room at the district office, and they were sitting down and they all had their legs out, and they were kind of doing some of these evaluations, and there was a table in there, and he tripped over their legs because there was no room to move, and he broke his nose on the table during his special education evaluation. So I sent them a letter later, a card, and then the picture had a smiley face. Thanks for the evaluation, and then you open it, it was a smash, and it was very sarcastic.
Oh my goodness.
So, yeah, he broke it, and he has a deviated septum because of it.
Oh my God.
Oh my goodness. Sorry.
So
Goodness.
So I don't know. So lots of stories, and I think talking to other families, getting to those families, when families ask about IEPs, I just say go to the support group pages,
right?
Talk to people,
Talk
to people, and prepare and watch those goals. Is there actual progress being made? And are they just changing the goals and decreasing them because they're not making progress? So kind of keep an eye on where those goals, not only what they are, but where they're going.
Right. That's good advice.
One thing that I would recommend, if at all possible, have somebody go with you. Don't go by yourself.
Right.
Because you could be listening to them and be stuck on what they said before, and they've moved on, and you've missed some,
Yeah.
critical information. And the other person may have gotten it, have them take notes. I'd highly recommend, instead of going by yourself, have somebody, a friend, husband.
You could read other
sister.
people's IEPs too, because I really didn't know what an IEP was. I mean, I
when you
learned
first
through the
start out,
process.
yeah.
So I don't know.
It
Maybe
is
read 'em.
hard. I mean, it's even hard for the teachers to read them, right? The deviations and, all the percentages and all of that.
Keep all your paperwork too, because you do need it for SSI. You need it for, I mean, they wanted it for Achieve, for Zion to get into Achieve. So keep all your paperwork.
Yeah, keep all your paperwork. And I think special ed, that's your school will keep the paperwork too if
OTC
you ever
wants
need
it. Yeah.
If you ever need
For
it, you
so
can call
long.
for so long. But these days they might even have it. And I will say too, when my son left public school and went to OTC for 1 year, his reading, just a special ed teacher is a friend of mine. And she was like, see, Mary, I told you, like there's just not enough time in the day. But like his reading skills increased like by 80% in 1 year being an OTC. And that was at the pre-college program. What was it called?
Adult basic literacy.
Yeah, adult. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Adult literacy program.
Do they still
which
have
I
that?
highly recommend. I think they do.
They still at OTC?
I haven't looked into that in years, so I don't know. But
They
that's
still
just,
they still do some, because I know I called for Chase, but because he's got dyslexia, they kind of asked us, kind of gave us some other ideas.
what
But
to
yeah.
do. But that was
they were-
eye-opening to me. Like, well, first of all, I felt a little guilt. Of course, we feel guilty about everything. But I thought, well, I really should have been working with him more. Probably could have had it up higher than that. But what does that show you? Just a little bit one-on-one in 1 year.
Well, only if they're interested in it, because like things that Zion was interested in, he is like just so smart in like writing, and like he just did his presentation at Achieve, and the program director just said, how did you become so good at, she was saying his public speaking, because he could do a PowerPoint like no other. I mean, like totally like better than some of my master's degree cohort. And so those things that he's interested in, but he cannot add 3 + 3 practically. So there's really things that
Splitter skills.
Yeah.
I wanted to add something that I learned, after so many years of having Kelsey started when she was 3 in early ed. So we had IEPs all the way up until she graduated. Something that I learned, it was more towards high school, middle school, going into high school, is, there are some really good teachers, and we wanted to thank them. So, of course, I'm a baker and a candle maker.
Gosh.
So what I would do
Probably gave some good gifts.
at the IEP meetings, to get them there, to make sure that they all came, because you had the PTs and the OTs. And,
Right.
and you wanted all them to be involved to put an input in on her IEP. So I would have like bagels and cream cheese. I'd bring breakfast in for the IEPs to get them there. And then after the fact, every single one of the people that came, I would do something homemade. I would make something, and I would deliver it the next day in a pretty box with a thank you letter. Thank you for attending Kelsey's IEP.
Yeah.
And I was told by one of the teachers that that they had said that, oh, that's the mom that brings the goodies. So, they came back the next year.
It's called bribery.
I was going to
Just say it for what it is.
Worked. If it works,
Yeah.
if it works.
I did the same thing with
But
all my
also show
teachers
my
every year.
appreciation. I'm thankful that you're coming to my daughter's
Yeah.
IEP. I'm thankful that you're involved. I do appreciate you. Because I think sometimes they do need to be appreciated. They're not.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and they all talk about the parents for the IEP meetings. Let's be real here.
Yeah.
They all know.
Well,
what
they
kind of
know
parent
if you
are.
know, and if you
Is it
know
great?
the law.
Oh, I was a bitch. I could be a bitch in the IEP.
Yeah, no, I mean,
I could be a bitch, but then I would follow up with cookies.
Yes.
I mean that it's a good thing. I don't mean
All
that's
is
a bad thing.
forgiven.
Yeah. It's what. Yeah.
But well, like
It's whatever impression they had last of you.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Or like, oh, these parents
they
are
would
good.
remember.
These parents are good. They know what they're doing.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
always a. Or who's going to show up? Is it mom? Is it grandma? Is it boyfriend? I mean, because you never know who is going to show up. And there was don't say anything about this. Don't say anything about that.
Always ask for more than what you want. Too.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, because like if you ask for like a little bit more, you're going to get maybe half of that or something.
Right.
I don't know. It just seemed like
Right.
that's what you.
Right.
what happens.
That's a sales strategy.
Yeah.
Just saying.
And a marriage strategy.
Oh, yeah, right?
I'm talking furniture.
It's a life strategy.
Are you winning? Are you?
Ask
You're
for a whole
shopping for
house of
furniture?
and you'll, anyway.
That's
Well,
great.
we'll wrap it up. So if you have any questions about IEPs or school experiences, you can find us on our website, right, Tara?
Yep. And you can listen to us on Spotify and Apple. And then our last 5 episodes are on navigatingadultautism.com under the Listen Now post. And then I really want to make sure that you guys know about the autism gossip. It's on our navigatingadultautism.com page under blogs, and you can get all the monthly happenings that Dawn has gathered from the Springfield area. And it's we're really trying to make that a good resource for you all. So you can send it to our email address. If you have any happenings that are going on and you want an on the autism gossip, you could send them to moms at navigatingadultautism.com. Also, please listen, like, and subscribe. And we really need some 5-star ratings because someone left a bad rating and I don't even think they were a listener. So,
Oh, gosh.
so they didn't leave anything. They just left a 1 star. So we need to get some good ratings because we've only heard good things about this podcast. And we've only heard from you all telling us that this is a great resource. And we really need you guys that are actually listeners to leave us a 5-star rating. So
Yes.
anyways, thanks
Thank you,
everybody.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.